Well, thanks to everybody who voted for the Blue Dahlia in my last poll of what film I should watch and review next, because this 1946 crime film was fantastic. This is one of those films that you just love to discover, and you watch it and think, how have I not seen this classic before? I loved everything about the film. The performances, the story, everything about it was excellent. So I'm going to do my best to give a summary of the film, spoiler-free, and then offer some closing thoughts. So the film opens up and we have three veterans who have been recently discharged from the service. It's Alan Ladd as Johnny Morrison, Hugh Beaumont as George, and William Bendix as Buzz. These are three friends who have served together, and they have arrived in Hollywood. And they hop off a bus to go get a drink. Now they're hanging out, but Buzz, it seems, had a head injury in the war. And he starts to get really angry and animated at the sound of a jukebox playing. Now he's about to beat up the guy who's enjoying the music when his friends kind of calm him down. So he's got a little bit of a short temper. They get settled into a place to stay, and it's here that Johnny heads back to visit with his wife, Helen, played by Doris Dowling. He arrives at his house. There's this loud party going on with lots of drinking, and it's here that he discovers that his wife has not been faithful to him and has been having an affair with the character Eddie Harwood, played by actor Howard Da Silva, who is the owner of the Blue Dahlia nightclub out on Sunset Strip. Well, Eddie figures he probably needs to leave, but Johnny has kind of put things together and slugs him first, which pretty much ends the party. Now everybody leaves and Johnny confronts Helen alone, and she continues to angrily drink and really seems to despise him. And she tells him, just to hurt him, that their son Dickie, whom Johnny had believed had died of diphtheria, had actually died in a car crash that resulted from Helen driving drunk. Now, he's furious about this and draws a gun to her horror. Says things like, "That's what I ought to do, but you're not worth it." Then he drops the gun and leaves in the rain. I mean, man, this film is great so far. Now, Helen gives a call to talk with Buzz and mentions that she had a quarrel with Johnny. George returns around here with groceries, but Buzz, it seems, has just walked out. He heads to the bar and has a seat next to Helen and shares a drink with her. And she offers that they can have a drink back at her place. And Buzz, it would seem, is not completely aware of who she is. Now, Eddie Harwood, meanwhile, heads to the Blue Dahlia Club on that same rainy night. He meets with the character Leo, played by Don Costello, who is the club manager, and they talk business, although Leo makes a comment about him seeing that Morrison dame. Eddie is done with her, though, and they talk on the phone together. He wants to break it off with her, but she seems to be blackmailing him and doesn't want their relationship to end. And Eddie says he will head over to see her. Well, we then cut to lovely actress Veronica Lake as a character Joyce Harwood. She's driving in the rain, and she just happens to see Johnny and offers him a ride. They make some small talk, and she gives him a ride to Malibu, and we discover that she is separated from Eddie. Now, Buzz returns home around here, and George questions him where he was. Now, Buzz is just drenched from the rain, and maybe he's just a little bit out of it and doesn't give much of an answer about where he had been. Now, remember, Buzz is the one with the head injury, so he's kind of an interesting character to watch. Now, the next morning, the maid shows up at Helen's room, tries to wake her, but discovers she's actually dead. The radio soon announces that Helen has been murdered, and Johnny, her husband, is a suspect. Now, the character Dad Newell, played by Will Wright, he's a house detective who saw Johnny fighting with Helen. And he also witnessed Buzz and Eddie, who had also entered her bungalow. And he reports all of this to the police. So we got a bunch of different suspects here. Johnny, meanwhile, has breakfast by the shore at the hotel he's staying at. And there's Joyce, who also happened to stay at the same hotel in another room and who playfully inquires about what is going on with him. And they both sort of figure out that they each have some sort of baggage that they're dealing with and running from. Incidentally, watching the film, there's some beautiful, subtle music here by Victor Young. Really enjoyed it. But wouldn't you know it, Johnny catches exposition radio and here's a description of himself as the suspect that the police are looking for. He ditches his suspicious-looking attire and leaves, and Joyce watches. By the way, it's a really interesting transition, as basically she turns into the Los Angeles City Hall. Captain Hendrickson, played by Tom Powers, meets with Eddie and questions him about Helen, about his own marriage and separation, and how he seems a tad suspicious. Well, he just responds with, "Am I under suspicion?" And the captain says, "I don't know. How do you feel about it?" I love some of the dialogue in this film. Buzz and George are brought in next for questioning. So they're sent home, and then they question the Dad Newell character. Now, Johnny, meanwhile, checks into a really cheap motel. Well, Joyce shows up to meet with Eddie. Now, remember, they're married but separated. And he makes some excuses about Helen, about how she didn't mean anything to him. But she's done with Eddie. She wants to know who killed Helen. And he, of course, shifts the blame to Johnny. Well, later, Johnny meets up with Joyce and they take a ride together. Now, he's cautious of how she seems to be so informed about him and his situation. And she's still sort of a mystery. And they actually settle to keep one another's secrets, it would seem. Now, George and Buzz, they get a tip about the Blue Dahlia Club from Dad, and they head that way. Well, the motel manager, Corelli, played by Howard Freeman, at this kind of creepy place that Johnny's staying at. He's in his room, and he's going through his stuff, and he finds Johnny's photo of himself with his son, and he decides he's going to use this to try to blackmail him. Well, Johnny doesn't take well to this and slugs him, and then by accident discovers on the back of that photo, long ago Helen had revealed that the character Eddie, his real name is Bauer. He's a murderer from New Jersey. So Johnny leaves, and Corelli kind of comes to, and he sells this information on Johnny's identity to the character Leo. Uh-oh. Johnny goes to confront Eddie, and he wants to know who killed his wife. He thinks Eddie did, but Eddie, of course, denies it and tells Johnny he needs to just get out of town and go to hide. Johnny brings up to Eddie about New Jersey and if he ever lived there. And this is right around the time that the door buzzes and it's Joyce. So, feeling betrayed by her, Johnny leaves. Now, he meets with George and Buzz, who are thrilled to see him again. You know, they've been worried about him knowing that he's on the run from the law. They want to know what he plans, since he can't hide out forever. And they kind of let it slip that they think he might have done the murder, but they're still there to support him. But Johnny doesn't take well to this, and in anger, he leaves. But once out on the street, Johnny gets pinched. But it's not the police, but it's rather some thugs who grab him and kidnap him. And he gets slugged, and they drag his sleeping body into this remote house. He comes to, puts up a good fight against these guys, but they clobber him again, and he gets tied up. And there's that character Leo, and he's ready to just slug him again with a slapjack that he's holding. I'm going to have to stop the summary here. We're getting close to the end, and I really don't want to give the ending away because it just gets so good as we get to the end. It's a great ending, as finally everything comes together, and we find out who the murderer really was. Can Johnny escape? Will he be reunited with Joyce again? Well, you got to watch this crime classic for yourself to find out. Well, let me offer some closing thoughts. The Blue Dahlia was a 1946 crime film with an original screenplay by Raymond Chandler, you know, the famous crime novelist, and it was directed by George Marshall, and it was produced by John Houseman and George Marshall. My thoughts on the film is that there was just so much to love about this movie. It's so much more than just a murder mystery story. There are so many fascinating, well-defined, and often highly suspicious characters that you never really know for sure who to pin this one on. The unfolding of the mystery of the murder is just so great. I've mentioned this about other crime films I've watched on this channel, like the film Laura, where the clues are just gradually given to you in the story, and you have to put all of the pieces together as the story unfolds. And that's definitely how this one was. I love the atmosphere and the mood and the feel of this film. You know, the rainy city streets at night, the rundown motels, the seedy cabins in the middle of nowhere, all of those little details. They just work so great in this film. And another one of the themes that I've noticed that I love in these films from this 1940s era is the idea of the cynical war hero. You know, he's back from the war, trying to find their way in a rapidly changing world where they never quite know how to fit in and whom to trust. Alan Ladd's Johnny character, he gets back, and he's almost instantly framed for murder of his unfaithful wife. Everyone is suspicious of him. The police want him. Even his two closest war buddies seem distrustful of him. And he's got to keep it together. He's on the run and he's alone and he's trying to get to the bottom of things. And seemingly, the only one he can trust, or can he, is this mysterious, lovely blonde. And Alan Ladd and Veronica Lake really do have some great chemistry together. And I like how, up until the very end, you aren't really completely sure what game she's playing with this guy. You know, he's a no-nonsense vet who never seems to lose his cool as he follows the leads to figure out who murdered his wife. And it was also curious to me why he seemed so driven to find this out, and not just, as some of the characters suggested to him, to just get out of town and hide out for a while and let the police take care of it. So, you know, there's a lot of shadiness to this film with no one that you can ever really trust. I mean, heck, we're not even sure up until the very end that even Alan Ladd's character himself, the suspect, we don't really know if he was even the killer or not. It's great to see how it all comes together at the end. So, as mentioned, I thought the characters of this film were so richly defined, often with quick wit and sharp dialogue. Howard Da Silva, especially, as the character Eddie, was just perfect as the sleazy nightclub owner who never seems to lose his cool. There's this fascinating brief scene as the character Dad visits with Eddie, tries to extort some money from him. Eddie sort of goes along with it, but he's very chill at the same time. He pays him, and then more or less lets him know in an unspoken way that he'd better be careful not to mess with him again. You know, says things like, "You forgot your cigar. Cigars go out awful easy, don't they, Dad?" I love it. The dialogue is so great in this film. Don Costello as Leo was cold as ice, and man, he doesn't care about smacking skulls without flapjack. You know, it's the best films that have the nastiest villains. I've said that before, and I stay by that rule. It's not just about having a great hero. You got to have some great bad guys, too. And this film had some excellent villains. Now, Hugh Beaumont has been in several films I've reviewed this year. And yes, this is Hugh Beaumont of Leave It to Beaver fame, but I love seeing some of these characters he plays. You know, I've watched him earlier as Michael Shayne, private detective, and here he plays this logical lawyer character that balances really well with the William Bendix character, the one that's got the traumatic brain injury. And I thought that was a very clever story idea of having someone who, due to a head injury from the war, is someone you could easily suspect of murder, but yet maybe that's too much of a red herring that the movie has given us. You got to watch the end for yourself to see. In any case, this film was fantastic, and this has to be up there in the top 10 crime films I have ever reviewed from this golden era of cinema. It was just amazing. There is so much interesting trivia for this one, too. But I think what stood out to me the most was this legendary story about how the studio had to cater to the extravagant whims of Raymond Chandler in order to get this film made. Okay, here's the story. So Alan Ladd had been called up for military service, and production on the movie, which was in the screenplay stage, had to be sped up. Screenwriter Raymond Chandler offered to finish the screenplay by working drunk. The studio let him work from home, which was uncommon for screenwriters back in the 1940s. And he was provided with 2 Cadillac limousines, one to get the completed pages to the studio, and the other one just for his wife, as well as 6 secretaries ready to work for him at any time, and a direct phone line open to the studio switchboard. Well, he got the script in on time, and supposedly many now believe the drunkenness scenario was just a ruse by Chandler to get some sweet privileges from the studio. I mean, hey, he's a crime writer, so maybe he knows all about those crazy tricks of the trade that he could use in his favor. I don't know. The film also marks the 3rd time that Paramount stars Alan Ladd and Veronica Lake would star together. I believe they were in like 7 films together. They were also in films like This Gun for Hire and The Glass Key from 1942. and I might have to review some of these in the future. I thought they were really great in this film. And a historical note, shortly after this film came out in 1947, a woman named Elizabeth Short was murdered in Los Angeles, and the local papers dubbed the case the Black Dahlia, in a twist on this film's title. And that's a true crime story that remains an unsolved mystery to this day. Well, that's my review of The Blue Dahlia from 1946. It was a crime masterpiece with a screenplay by Raymond Chandler and directed by George Marshall, starring Alan Ladd, Veronica Lake, William Bendix, Hugh Beaumont, and many other great actors. It was one of the best crime films I've ever seen from this era. I loved it. Thank you for voting for this one, and it's definitely one worth checking out.